Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. It's my tag team partner IRS.
Tax sheet, Gary Rhodes, everybody. Just because you get DiBiase speared.
There you go. And it's finally returned. We haven't done one in months. The last one we did was the most controversial show we've ever done. We brought it back under the radar. And this under the radar is going to focus on who?
The Big Boss Man, baby.
Traylor, Big Boss Man, aka Big Bubba Rogers. Let's get right into it, Gary.
Well, before we start, the Big Boss Man was one of my favorites growing up. What do you agree was one of your favorites?
He was someone I liked. He was my first stepdad's favorite wrestler. My first stepdad loved him.
Well, because he was around during the Rock and Wrestling.
Yeah.
Then he was around when we were older through the Attitude Era too.
Yeah, and he evolved too. And
exactly.
I really enjoyed him. He was my stepdad's absolute favorite, my brother's father. But we'll go right into it. He starts off, before wrestling, he was actually a prison guard in Cobb County, Georgia.
Believe it or not.
Would have thought it.
In 1985, he went to Jim Crockett Promotions, working under his real name, Ray
Traylor, as a jobber. When Dusty Rhodes seen him and said, I see something in this guy, took him off the TV for 12 weeks and brought him back as Jim Cornette's personal bodyguard, Big Bubba Rogers.
And if you really think of Corny from back in the NWA days, you always see Bubba Rogers there with him. You know, he was just a mainstay. And he helped Corny with a lot of his feuds he had going on back in that day. Rock and Roll Express and so on and so forth.
And one of the big feuds of his early career, Big Bubba Rogers, Boss Man, was against Dusty Rhodes. They had a pretty solid feud all the way through basically off and on from '86, almost up to when he left in '87.
Yeah, they actually had it where they had a tie-breaking match where he actually had wins over Dusty, which.
Well, they did a series of bunkhouse matches, which were they're kind of like a cross between a bull rope match and a no-holds-barred match, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
They haven't done one in a while. That's just why I wanted to bring that up. But they ended it with a cage match, which, of course, Dusty won, which...
Well, he's Dusty.
He was the booker.
Exactly.
Booker man.
Well, he went from wrestling the Crockett promotion, then went to UWF in 1987.
Where he beat One Man Gang to become the world champion.
One Man Gang was on his way to work for WWF.
And soon after... Boss Man was on his way to work for Big Bubba Rogers at the time, went to WWF and became the Big Boss Man. More of a gimmick that went back to his role as a prison guard.
Like you were saying, he actually wore his actual prison guard uniform.
Yeah, that was part of the uniform he wore. That's why it had the Georgia patch on it and everything was actually actual. Now, I don't know if they didn't copy it and keep making it when he would tear it up, but I think the original one he came in with was his original prison guard uniform. He goes in, pretty much becomes a top heel right away and starts feuding with Hulk Hogan, which at that time there was no bigger feud in wrestling.
You put anybody with Hulk Hogan at that point.
And during that time, he also formed a tag team with a former opponent, the One Man Gang, who had been repackaged as Akeem the African Dream, and they became the Twin Towers, and they had a nice long feud with Hogan and Randy Savage as the Mega Powers, and they were actually part of the match where the Mega Powers explode, or the breakup of the Mega Powers happens, the explosions of WrestleMania 5 match.
Yeah, on Saturday Night's Main Event.
Which, for those of you that don't remember, Saturday nights, in that era, there were only 4 pay-per-views, so Saturday Night Main Events were like monthly pay-per-views.
Oh yeah, they were awesome. I wish they were back, but then when Vince brought them back, they weren't nearly as good.
No, it was just like watching a regular episode.
Yeah.
They didn't put a lot of effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Twin Towers had a solid run. wrestled all your faces. They wrestled Demolition. They actually got a win over the Rockers. I think at WrestleMania 5, was it 5 or 6?
I think so.
No,
it was 5 because 6 they faced each other.
Yeah, the 6 they faced each other.
And he beat Akeem in 2 minutes flat.
Yeah, that was after he turned to face and dropped the gimmick where he beat everybody with the nightstick and pretty much squash matched Akeem, which shows you how much they cared about the Akeem character.
I kind of liked that. That was funny.
The introduction was funny.
Yeah.
The Twin Towers was good because you believe that guys of that nature would be dominating.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean, take away what you want to from Akeem, the comedy part. When he was a one-man gang, he was a very impressive individual.
Oh yeah.
And some of the moves
Akeem, he was good.
Oh yeah. And Boss Man was just as good as he was. He wasn't near as big, but he was pretty heavy then.
Yeah.
He was heavier then. So I mean, he wasn't 500 pounds. He was probably around 400.
350, 400, somewhere.
You know who he kind of reminds? I mean, not to go off subject, but who kind of reminds me of nowadays would be your boy Bubba Ray Dudley.
Yeah.
Because Bubba back in his days was like 400 pounds. Now he's probably a slim 270.
Slim, buffed, and jacked.
Calfzilla. Anyways, but that's what it kind of reminds me of because as Boss Man got older, he got smaller, but he got better.
Now, probably the biggest win of Boss Man's face run, and I know it hurts you, Gary, but at WrestleMania 7, he won a match against Mr. Perfect. It was a count out. But the thing of it is, he does have a WrestleMania win over Mr. Perfect and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
And also, the main part of that is this is a match that Andre the Giant came back for a little bit.
Yeah. He was in Boss Man's corner.
Yeah.
Which after that, another character came from Boss Man's past, Nails.
Yeah. And they had one of the best feuds of Boss Man's turn. Also, Boss Man had to feud with. Remember, he had to feud with Dusty. Was that before?
That was before. That was well before. Because that's when he was heel. But
yeah.
With the Nails feud, when Nails beat the hell out of him in the ring, it looked so damn real, didn't it?
Oh, he probably told him not to hold any punches.
I mean, you've seen the pictures of Boss Man. There's probably a lot of makeup, but he looked beat the hell.
I mean, Boss Man's a big, tough guy. I mean, he could take a beating, I would bet, which plays into his characters. And I'm sorry I'm jumping back, but we kind of jumped over it. The Dusty Rhodes feud in WWE was a pickup from the feud in WCW, or not WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions at the time. And I think the feud they had there, while not as important, Dusty wasn't a champion and Boss Man was a champion. I think their WWE feud was more entertaining.
Oh, it was. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you bring Dusty in there, you put the polka dots on him, and you think it's gonna. Anybody else who had those polka dots probably would have failed.
Yeah.
Dusty could just get over wearing anything. He could had a gimmick wearing a potato sack, and he'd probably win the world championship if Hogan wasn't there.
There you go.
But back after the Nails thing.
Well, the Nails.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Nails. I thought it was a really good feud. It worked out well. Nails had personal issues, which pretty much drove him out of the Federation. After that, he kind of toiled around in obscurity. Was basically a guy that was just there. Wrestled, basically in Royal Rumbles. Wrestled guys on Monday night, early versions. He was on the early Monday Night Raws, wasn't he? I'm going to say he was on one of the first.
Yeah.
But if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I do apologize.
I know he's on the main event, so...
Well, I'll apologize now. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't want a whole bunch of hate mail
like we had on the last Under the Radar.
Wow. Anyway.
But he leaves from there, which a lot of the older WWF wrestlers were doing at the time, and goes to WCW, which they were paying more. Goes there... comes in as the boss, which is pretty much the Big Boss Man character.
Vince goes, no.
Yeah, after Vince McMahon threatens a lawsuit, they switch him up to become a guardian angel, which I absolutely hated that, to be honest with you.
I did too. But they finally got rid of that. He went to Big Bubba Rogers again.
Yep, which was where he should have been all along when they came in. I mean, he had history in NWA as Big Bubba Rogers. NWA kind of morphed into WCW. They could have brought him in as Big Bubba, and he could have ran his whole career there as Big Bubba. as Big Bubba, he became part of the Dungeon of Doom.
Which didn't last too long, but it wasn't really the right fit. I mean, he was Big Bubba Rogers, and all the other people had like cartoony gimmicks.
Yeah.
So
Well, him and Luger.
Yeah.
But he kind of came in when the Dungeon of Doom was being phased out, because pretty much the NWO hit and destroyed that style of gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the first guys to want to join the NWO. And then at that time, the angle was that he had signed a contract with WCW, so he couldn't join the NWO. So he kind of went around. He was off of TV for a little bit, and came back as Ray Traylor for the first time since 1985.
Ray who?
Traylor.
Remember?
Yeah. And they had him. He was working 6-man matches against the NWO with the Steiner brothers, which that worked out for a little bit. They were all managed by Ted DiBiase. It worked out basically until Scott turned on Rick and joined the NWO himself. Shortly thereafter, Ray Traylor leaves the WCW and heads back to the WWF and gets put right into one of the biggest angles in the history of wrestling, the corporation, Vince McMahon. He was one of the first members of the corporation.
He was Vince McMahon's personal bodyguard. He wore the mask over his face for a while, so people didn't really know who he was.
And he was the first member of the Shield.
Believe in the Shield, but no. He was integrated in so many different storylines with the corporation that they finally, later on, him and Ken Shamrock got together and became tag team champions. I believe they beat
Rock and Sock, didn't they? No, they beat the Outlaws.
The Outlaws.
Did they lose it to Rock and Sock?
Probably.
I think. I don't know. The titles changed so much in the Attitude Era that it's hard to keep track at times. One of the main things I wanted to talk about while we're talking about this run is his gear. His Big Boss Man gear changed from the prison guard outfit to the riot gear. Basically, what the Shield is wearing now. And this is where Boss Man went from someone I liked watching to someone I loved watching.
Oh yeah, his character evolved so much from 1985 on to this point, and the 13-year period. Boss Man was in charge of his game, I think. His matches were for a guy his size, he could move. I always thought he was fast, but he could actually move and he could wrestle.
Yeah, he definitely could, and it was evident in the guys he beat. I mean, he beat guys like The Rock during this run, and he was a hardcore champion 4 times, which, everybody at that point.
Well, the thing is, you beat The Rock at The Rock's hottest point in his career.
Yep.
You're beating The Rock in the Attitude Era. And then people just don't really talk about you much. That's why we're doing this under the radar thing. Is no one really ever talks about the Boss Man that much and how great he was. I mean, he was an awesome competitor. The hardcore division, I think he legitimized it. Because Mick had the belt first,
yeah,
but he was going for the world title.
Exactly. To me, I think Boss Man, probably, I would say he's one of the 2 or 3 best hardcore champions. Crash Holly being another one. And really, honestly, I think they're the 2 best. I can't think of anybody that maybe Al Snow, just because a number of times Al Snow would win it and lose it.
Well, the rivalry him and Al Snow had was awesome too. I really
that was one of the main hardcore feuds they had at the time, was him versus Al Snow, and part of the centerpiece of the feud was Al Snow's dog Pepper. He had gotten rid of Head as a mascot and started bringing Pepper, which was a little Chihuahua. Basically, they were trying to rip off the Taco Bell commercials of the time. It was the same kind of dog. It got so heated at one point, he hits him with a dog carrier, and Jim Ross has to tell the crowd, the dog's not really in there. But 2 weeks later, Boss Man kidnaps Pepper, kills the dog, cooks him up, and feeds him to Al Snow.
It's grade A pepper, Al. How do you like it, Al? I loved the Boss Man at this point. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
I like dogs, don't get me wrong, but it's wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really kill the dog.
No.
But it was, like you said, it was hilarious. His comic timing was so spot on. He was so over the top with it that you couldn't do nothing but laugh about it.
Which one of his biggest feud to me was the next one we're going to talk about with the Big Show, which actually really I think gave Big Show character, because if you really look at Big Show before this point in his career, he really didn't have he wasn't a deep character. He was a giant WCW for most of the time. Then he was with the corporation for a little bit, and then he was Undertaker's do boy, you know.
Yeah, you forget about the Shokishi of the show.
Well, I think this was before that.
Was it?
I think
Are
so.
you sure?
I think so. It might have been. I can't remember for 100% sure. But the funeral for Big Show's father was probably one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Well, he gets the old, looked like it was a Blues Brothers car.
It was the old Blues Brothers Dodge they drove.
Was the Blues Brothers police car with the big giant megaphone, and he's talking trash to
It's your daddy!
the Big Show.
Daddy!
He ties the casket, for those of you who haven't seen it, and it's not as tasteless as it sounds.
Oh, but it is funny as hell.
Actually, it is as tasteless as it sounds, but it is funny. He ties the casket to the back of his truck, and Big Show jumps on it, and they pretty much just go around.
He's dragging Big Show in a casket, and then Big Show rolls off. All you see is the Big Show crying. It was hilarious. I mean, Big Show's father had died years before that, so he had no problem. It wasn't,
It was almost a tribute to him.
It was. They actually, during that storyline, Vince had let them ring the bell 10 times for Big Show's father, which was really cool. I mean, his dad died way before he was in WWE.
Yeah, and pretty much, I would say that's one of the big highlights of the career. After that, he had he went around. Basically, they didn't use him much. They put him on Heat and Velocity and shows of that nature.
Trained the guys on OVWs, part time.
I mean, the years, if you look at it, the year he was a trainer in OVW, guys that came from that class, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Dave Batista, guys like Rene Dupree that have since fizzled out but had a good start.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in September 2004, we did lose the big boss man.
Yeah, unfortunately, he died early of a heart attack.
He was only 41 years old.
Yeah. And it really is a shame, because I would have liked to see where he would have went if he would have kept trading wrestlers, how good the wrestlers he could trade. Like I just mentioned, the guys I just mentioned.
Well, look at it this way. Right now, he'd be, 50?
Yeah.
And he could be wrestling in TNA. All joking aside, but
he probably would be part of the Aces and Eights.
He probably would be, just to be a dick. I mean, I've always enjoyed his character. The whole scenes with Pepper, I enjoyed that. I know you enjoyed it. I mean, a lot of the Attitude Era stuff was spot on with him.
I think he was at his absolute zenith at the Attitude Era. The three feuds that stick out to me, well, actually 4, but 2 are the same guy. The 2 feuds against Dusty were amazing. The feud against Hulk Hogan and the feud against the Big Show. Basically, he was feuding with Dusty over the NWA title, Hogan over the WWF title, and Big Show over the WWF title.
And you look at it, when he was feuding with Dusty, he was in his early 20s. When he's feuding with Hogan, he was in his early mid-20s. How many people could say that?
Yeah, really.
I mean, honestly, I thought he was older than what he was when he passed. But, I mean, the guy had a hell of a career, and he had a hell of a life in wrestling.
Oh, yeah. And he's a guy, the reason we do these under the radars, because we haven't done them for a while, and we've gained a ton of viewers since the last one we did. So you guys may not have seen the other ones we have. If not, go check them out. We have a couple others. We did one on Perry Saturn, one on Haku,
Bobby Eaton,
and one on Bobby Eaton. And this is the 4th one, the Big Boss Man. The Haku one, we made a mistake on there, and people grilled us about it. Although it is our most famous video, our most popular video, it's also the one we've caught the most slack for. So we went back and forth whether we were going to do this or not, and finally we decided, you know what, let's just go ahead and do it.
If we had anything wrong here, we apologize.
Yeah.
We're only human.
That's why God put erasers on pencils, Gary.
Anyways, but we're going over our favorite wrestlers. You know what I'm saying? If you have a favorite wrestler or something like that, put a comment down below, and
Well, someone that basically these are guys that time forgot. You're never going to see a Big Boss Man DVD.
No.
But you should, because look at, he had some great matches with Nails. He had great matches with Big Show, Hogan, Dusty Rhodes. His match with Akeem was good. Their matches with the Rockers were good.
But if you're going to put someone down, just make sure it's going to be somebody that would be under the radar. Some of your personal favorites from back in the day. You know, like a Boss Man, like Akeem the African Dream. You know, someone that of that nature. Don't put Hulk Hogan down, or he's got like 50 million DVDs. We're not going to worry about Hulk Hogan.
But basically, if you guys need to go back, check out the history of the Big Boss Man. I'm sure there's tons of stuff on YouTube you can find on it.
Oh yeah.
And we'll probably throw in a couple links of some Boss Man matches that we quite enjoyed, just for you guys to check out.
All right.
But basically, that's all I got to say. Is there anything you wanted to add?
That's it.
Well, my name is George Coles.
I'm Gary Rhodes.
And this has been Heel Heat.